Jai Shree Swaminarayan, Jai Sri Krishna, Jai Mahadev, Jai Hanumanji, Jai Ganeshji, Jai Mataji. This is Sachin Karnik speaking. This is a continuing series of recordings in English on some of the controversial or misunderstood areas and topics regarding Swami Sajanand, who is also known as Bhagwan Swaminarayan. At present, as you may know, there are 40 plus different organizations throughout the world that are devoted to the worship of Swaminarayan Bhagwan. And it is my effort here as a seva to the whole of humanity to present the spirituality of Shree Swaminarayan, without organizational division, without any particular emphasis on just the Gujarati community or any particular community or even on Hinduism as such. Because spirituality is universal. It's beyond universal also. And that is what I'm trying to emphasize here. I'll do the best I can. I'm not saying that I'll be 100% successful in this, but I shall try my best with the grace of God and prayers to all the enlightened beings that they bless me to complete this endeavor. As I said in the previous recording, there is a tremendous amount of misinformation, misunderstanding. There is quite a bit of twisting of different scriptures and different ideas, and so many things has happened, which I am very familiar with, which I'm not even going to get into all that thing because, I'm just going to present what I want to present. And then if you want to know what the various organizations are teaching, you will have to go to them and learn from them. I can certainly present their teachings from what I have understood, but it may not be accurate 100%. So I don't want to misrepresent anyone, but I think I have a pretty good understanding of what the current organizations are teaching. And they all have their different perspectives, and I respect them all for their own perspective, and they have their perspective. My perspective is simply that there is not a particular perspective. There is a continual search for truth without fixed conclusions, and it is an exploratory research attitude that is in my mind rather than a simply fixed attitude based on belief. So it is a bit different from traditional religion. I don't actually believe in religion. I don't actually emphasize belief. My emphasis is on direct experience, not on belief. So belief has its place, but belief is also the cause of division. It's the cause of dislike and hatred and so many other things. I'll try to explain that also in much more depth later on, and what all that is referring to. It's a bit tricky to understand. It's difficult also for me to explain it at times, but I shall try my best. In any case, I want to do the best I can slowly and carefully because I tend to actually divert into many different topics all at one time, and I apologize for that. I'm going to try my best, by the grace of God, to present the spirituality of this extraordinary spiritual being, extraordinary spiritual master who is known as Swaminarayan, who is also known as Swami Sajanand, and these recordings are made for everybody. People who may not know anything about Swaminarayan can understand this and can get some understanding, some background, because I'm going to try to present it in a very objective, clear, meaningful way, rather than trying to preach a particular doctrine of any particular current organization. I will present them to you. I can say that this particular organization believes this way, this is their interpretation, how the interpretation came about. I can present all of that, and I will do that. That's no problem. And it'll be very interesting also for you to hear that. You can see your own conclusion on that, or you can form your own conclusion on that. Right, so let's begin here. We were talking about the life of Nilkantha Varani, and that was his name, this boy that is traveling in the forests, in the jungles, in the mountains, with wild animals and avoiding cities basically at that time, going into the different tirtha, different holy places, and asking a question. And that question was, what is Jiva, Ishvara, Maya, Akshara, Brahm, Parabrahm? He was asking this question. Now, some may say he's asking this question because he wants more clarification about that. He doesn't really know what they are. This is one point of view. Many people who are not devotees of Swaminarayan, they may feel that way, that he's in the form of a sadhaka, he's in the form of a yogi, and he's doing extreme levels of penance and practice and fasting and all. Some really intense fasting is going on, and he's having undoubtedly some extraordinary mystical experiences because he had mastered Ashtanga Yoga, the eightfold yoga of Patanjali Maharishi, that was taught to him by Gopal Yogi. Gopal Yogi was his guru in the Himalayas. These are just the facts. So without any kind of propaganda or distortion, I'm simply presenting to you the actual facts, and then my opinion will also be presented. I request you to form your opinion. And so, or opinion or perspective. But it takes time. It takes a good deal of study before any meaningful opinion can even be formed. All right, so here we go. So I want you to place yourself in this mindset of visualizing this teenager, from this age of 11 onwards, all the way up to the age of 18, literally roaming the length and breadth of India. Now that is really something incredible. He went from Chepaya to the mountains in the Himalayas, and he went east, and he went south, all the way down to the southern tip of India, Kanyakumari. And then from there he went to the western side, and then eventually wound up in Gujarat. That kind of an incredible journey was possible, if you look at it from a yogic point of view, that this kind of journey is possible when there is extraordinary spiritual power that is awakened inside the body and in the mind by the Ashtanga Yoga. There is really a limitless amount of power that is accessible when one masters Ashtanga Yoga. Now, in today's world, if we try to master Ashtanga Yoga, we are not probably going to be able to do that. We can try. We can reach certain level, and we will probably get blocked at some point. And there's some reasons behind that which I don't want to get into right now. But that path of Ashtanga Yoga is extremely difficult. I mean, the word difficult is also too mild. It is like next to impossible. It's like that. Just one simple example. If you sit for just 10 minutes in a nice natural setting and close your eyes, or even if you keep your eyes open, in 10 minutes, my mind or your mind or anybody's mind will wander in 100 different places, probably more than that, in our past memories, in our attachments, in our desires, and we see something and we are either attracted or repulsed. So much mental activity goes on, emotional activity, in just 10 minutes. In Ashtanga Yoga, there's 200 sutras, yoga sutras of Patanjali Maharishi. And the first yoga sutra is yoga's chitta vritti nirodha. And the goal of Ashtanga Yoga is in that first sutra in itself, that the entire mental process completely stabilizes and it becomes totally silent. And in that silence, you realize samadhi. This is the idea. Right? So, in a nutshell, this is the idea. Other ways of describing this also are there. Just try to do this and see what happens. The Ashtanga Yoga is so incredibly difficult that even those who are claiming to have done this Ashtanga Yoga, even today there are great yogic masters, and they have definitely mastered asanas and different stages of Ashtanga Yoga. But to reach that samadhi state, there cannot be a tinge of ego. This is the biggest quality. You can learn asanas, you can turn the body in different ways and do fasting, and all these things are possible. Even observe brahmacharya, which is also extraordinarily difficult. This kind of what is called naishtika, urdhvareta, naishtika brahmacharya. It's easy to talk about this, but it's very, very difficult. And it's not just a question of difficulty. It requires really grace of God. This is a theistic way of looking at this, and this is kind of what Sajanand Swami taught also. But I'll give you my opinion here. I believe that is also true. Now, it may be possible for someone by their own efforts to reach that. There is that possibility, and that can happen. But there's the ego that will come along with that. So one of the points that we see in the life of Shri Nilkantvarani, we see that he is constantly worshipping Vishnu in the form of Shaligram. And he's got this, what is called Gutko, that's what in Gujarati language is called Gutko. It's an extract of all the scriptures that he kept with him. So he can read that. So he's keeping in touch with that extracted version of the scriptures. And he's going to different holy places, meeting with different pandits and other people. And he is continuously worshipping God. His devotion is never hindered. This is a fact. These are just the facts. Again, these facts, in my opinion, are not talked about or emphasized in the 40 organizations today inside the Swaminarayan Sampradaya. They're not interested in talking about the devotional life of Swami Sajanand. They want to just emphasize that he is God or he is Bhagwan and Purna Purushottam and all this thing. That's they're doing that, whatever reason maybe they want to emphasize, that's one thing. But that understanding is an extremely evolved and it's a final level of understanding. Even Gunatitanand Swami said this. In Swamini Vato, if you are familiar with this scripture, Swamini Vato is a tremendous scripture. In the Swaminarayan Sampradaya and in Hinduism, or in world scriptures actually. And it is an extract of 40 years of teachings from a very high level great Paramahansa of Swami Sajanand. Swami Sajanand had many Paramahansas, and many people believe that he is the incarnation of that Mool Akshara Brahma. That kind of belief is there. There's various organizations that propagate this idea. So Gunatitanand Swami himself has talked about this Ashtanga Yoga, and where the level of Ashtanga Yoga is in comparison to the understanding that Sajananda Swami or Swaminarayan Bhagwan is the ultimate, the final, original Tattva inside Akshardham, beyond Akshara Brahma, that final Swarup of God, that final Tattva of God, that Aksharatit, beyond Akshara Brahma, that final Tattva, that is Sarvopari, beyond everything. He said to understand this and to accept that is much beyond Ashtanga Yoga. This is in Swamini Vato. Now think about this point. So if the 40 organizations now, or me talking right now, or whoever believes that the ordinary general public, even if it's a learned person in Hinduism, who has mastered the scriptures, can understand what this means, that Sajanand Swami is Sarvopari, beyond incarnations and avatars and beyond everything and beyond Ashtanga. It is not something that can be understood like that. It requires a thorough understanding of the scriptures and personal sadhana and grace of God and your own wisdom to awaken. So many things are required. And that's one way. Another way is there is a possibility that someone has that already from past lives, and they click with it and they can see it. It's like if you just use a worldly example, if you look at the postdoctoral people who have PhDs and then they're doing much detailed research and higher level physics and stuff like that. The ordinary students in physics won't even understand it. Not to mention the lay public. Even those who are PhD physicists may not understand what some postdoctoral fellow is working on in some particular area. So in the same way, Swami Sajanand has given a perspective of Vedanta that is absolutely incredible. And I'm going to get into that. It is absolutely mind-blowing and mind-boggling at times. But it is really, really something. And there are many scholars now in the Swaminarayan Sampradaya who have written some extraordinary books and works on these things. And again, it is not something that the general public can understand that easily. They're just not going to understand that, because they don't have the background. So there is a way to create the background without having spent 20, 30 years studying Vedanta and scriptures and the Shat Darshanas and these other things. There is another approach to take. And that approach is to directly study the Vachanamrita, which is 262 discourses, or if you believe in the 273, then the 273 discourses. If you study that scripture and keep reading it and keep contemplating on it, and by listening and to the talks of the sages that are available, and at the same time, you're welcome to listen to what I have to say, that's fine, but you do your own study, and you will see the extraordinary synthesis, as I mentioned last time, of the entire 10,000 spiritual history of India. But the points that I'm going to be making is talking also about the field of psychology and sociology and medical sciences and anthropology. You know, these things that are there in the universities and how they connect with Vachanamrita, how they connect with Sanatana Dharma, how they connect with the Vedic tradition and the scriptures. You know, so that is going to be my role here as a seva, because it's not being done, you know, and it's difficult to do perhaps, or I don't know, it's just not being done. So whatever the reason may be, this is in my heart and in my mind that this has to be done. So it is being done. That's all. And it is the grace of so many sages and so many, you know, blessings are there from so many people. So anyway, continuing forward, let's go back. I apologize for jumping because I tend to jump on a lot of different topics all at one time, and I really apologize for that. Let's go back to Nilkandavarani again. You know, he is asking this question, Jeev, Ishwar, Maya, Akshara, Brahm, Parabrahm. Now, we want to understand this, but we also want to recognize a fact that when a question is being asked, it can mean one of two things. It can mean that the person asking the question doesn't know the answer, or it can mean the person asking the question is looking to see if those who are answering the question have the right answer. Isn't that logical? There's certain logic in that. So you can look at the life of Nilkandavarani in both ways. If you look at it very objectively, you know, leaving all of the different teachings of the current organizations aside for the time being, because they have their own perspectives and they're kind of just locked in their own thinking, and that's fine, you know, that's okay for them. I mean, but I'm not criticizing that. But leave all that aside just for the time being and look at this very objectively. And what do you see? You see a teenager who is asking this question, and this question is not any ordinary question. It is not also a question about sadhana, you know, about how to do spiritual practices, because he had already mastered the Ashtanga Yoga in 1 year, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that last time or not, but in 1 year, he had mastered Ashtanga Yoga, and Gopal Yogi was his teacher, and there were some other teachers also. So, when he is asking this question, what is Jiva? He's asking what is the nature of the soul. What is Ishvara? He's asking about cosmic entities like Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, etc. These are Ishvaras. What is Maya and Mahamaya? You know, what is the illusory power, the veiling power, the bonding, the binding power of God? You see, what is Akshara Brahma? So he was trying to ask about, you know, what is Akshara Brahma? Because this is written in the scriptures also. And then what is Parabrahma? You see, so this question is something very interesting. Why would he ask such a question? Think about that for a moment. Assuming that what the Paramahansa wrote about his life and what he himself described is true and that nobody's lying, assuming that that's the case, then why is he asking this question? Can you answer this question? I'm asking you, all of you who are listening, can you answer this? You see? Can you answer why he's asking this question? Well, there are many answers given traditionally to this. But I'll give you my perspective on this. You know, he is asking this question because he is checking to see the level of Vedantic development that has occurred all throughout India. He's observing and checking to see. This is my perspective. Somebody might say, well, he's just trying to learn about these things. That's fine too. You want to take that perspective? That's well and good, because he was in the role of a sadhak and doing sadhana the whole time. So that is also a perspective. You can take that perspective. Like I said to you before, I'm trying to emphasize the spirituality behind this. I'm not trying to convince people one way or the other. You convince yourself the way you want. Believe what you want. If you want to be part of any of the current organizations, fine. If you don't, that's fine. But the one thing that nobody can deny is the extraordinary life of this individual and the spiritual teachings and realization that he had. That is really undeniable. And that is universal. It is not divisive. All right, so let's go back to this question. This question is a very intense question. It's not an ordinary question. It's not a question that any teenager can just think of. Even if you've gone through thousands of scriptures of, like really deep study of Hindu scriptures, this question still may not come inside your mind. The fact that a teenager is asking this question, and not just asking the question, but he is engaged in devotional worship of Bhagwan Vishnu, of Shaligram. That's a fact. He's engaged in intense tapasya. He's doing Gayatri Mantra when he was particularly in the Himalayas. I don't know if he did it after that or not, but he may have. I just don't know. And he is, sleeping under trees. He is not going inside the towns or villages. He is meeting some of the head people of the various Hindu monasteries at that time. And he is checking to see, is there brahmacharya? What kind of rules the sadhus have? How are they living? What are they doing? What type of worship are they doing? He's observing all of this thing. He's also asking this Vedantic question, what is Jiv, Ishwar, Maya, Akshar, Brahm, Parabrahm? It's an incredible thing. So he's asking this, but he's not simply asking that question by itself. He's asking that question amidst all these other activities also. Now, if you look at his keen observation, he has even said that he was actually able to enter into the idol, the Murti of Jagannath Ji, and see the feelings and bhav of the pujari. See, this is all yogic power. This is somebody who can do that. That's a very high level yogi. That much is for sure. At the very minimum, it's a very high level yogi. That might be a strange way to put that. At the very minimum, it's an extremely high level yogi. And then if those who believe that Sajanand Swami is the Mool Tattva and Bhagwan himself, then these things are not of much consequence at all. They're just very minor things actually. And the current 40 organizations consider all that as minor because they consider him as God, so they emphasize that point. You see, but the people outside the 40 organizations don't consider Sajanand Swami as God. They don't even know the background. They don't know all these things usually. And if they do know them, there is a lot of internal stuff that goes on about trying to convince people one way or the other, and a massive confusion can happen. And then from that, a lot of damage can happen to the Sanatana Dharma too if it's done in the wrong way. So that is why I'm emphasizing again very objectively what actually happened here in the life of Nilkant Varni, and you have to look at it very, very clearly, because he is in the role of a sadhaka. He is doing intense tapasya. He is totally bent on making sure that not a drop of semen from his body is discharged. He's doing different asanas like Gorak asana and a bunch of other kriyas like Basti kriya and Kunjar kriya. And these are all different yogic kriyas he was doing to make sure that his body and his mind and his his entire internal world was completely purified. You see, so he did all those things. There's a human body there, so he had done all the practices that a masterful siddha would do, a siddha yogi would be able to do. He did all that, but even in doing all that, he always maintained his devotional worship towards Vishnu. That's a very big point, because those yogis who do this type of sadhana, they can easily fall away from bhakti. Easily. In fact, it happens in yoga sadhanas. As a person continues to progress further and begins to realize the glory of the Atma, which is who we all are, then the devotional fervor, the devotional intensity begins to drop off and to diminish. And at some point, the devotion stops. Because as one realizes the Atma, you find yourself as so glorious, then you forget God completely. Because the mind is also not active in that. That's another whole point. That's a very different topic, which I don't want to get into right now. That's a topic about Atma Sakshatkar, Atmanishta, and the field of psychology, and the studies of the Panchkosh and all that. It's a very intense and very deep subject. So some other time people get to that also. But my point is, at this point in this conversation right now with all of you, that Nilkantha Varani was a master in Ashtanga Yoga. Point number one. Point number two, even with such mastery, with tremendous spiritual power awakened, with all kinds of spiritual powers, they're called siddhis, he left them aside, although maybe they were used at times, and he had mentioned that. Somehow they get used sometimes. But he didn't emphasize that, and he continued his attention on Bhagavan Vishnu. This is a very, very, very important point. It shows the significance of bhakti even when one is a siddha. That's what this point shows. You see? And the fact that he never left that bhakti is a testament to the glory of devotion to God, even at that highest level. So this point is emphasized in his life and in his teachings all the way throughout. It's a monotheistic perspective. It is not monistic or polytheistic. So be very clear, it is monotheism, but it is also called qualified non-dualism. So it's not dualism, but it's qualified non-dualism, called Vishishta Advaita. And that is his perspective on the nature of God. So, and that will be explained in more depth, because that's where this question about Jeev, Ishwar, Maya, Akshar, Brahm, Parabrahm actually comes from. Sajanand Swami, even as Nilkantha Varani, as Sajanand Swami, he had in his mind the Vishishta Advaita of Ramanujacharya. That seems to be the right perspective on the actual ontological reality. You see, because the ontological, meaning the study of being, the ontological entities of Jeev, Ishwar, Maya, Akshar, Brahm, Parabrahm are not a matter of simple scriptural interpretation, but they are a matter of direct realization. That is the difference. So the direct realization in Gujarati language, Sajanand Swami said, I'll say it in Gujarati and I'll translate for you. He said that Amari pratyaksh detail vache, me mara anubhav karene siddha kareli vache. He says it is my own direct vision, my direct experience of these things, and it is in my life also. It is in my anubhav. It is in my direct experience. You see? So the fact that Nilkantha Varani is asking these questions is indicative of his intense level of probing into Vedanta. Think about this point. The level of intensity of probing into the actual reality that is there based on anubhav, meaning based on experiential realization, not simply scriptural interpretation and debate. This is Nilkanta Varani. And by the way, he was called Nilkant because of his penance. Nilkant is the name of Bhagwan Shiv. Bhagwan Shiv is a great yogi. He is considered to be the master of all yogas, is Lord Shiva. And he is considered to be Yogeshwar. Even Krishna is considered to be Yogeshwar, obviously. Bhagwan Shiv is considered to be the Adi Yogi, or the original yogi. From whom all the yogic traditions have come about. So, Nilkantha is a name of Bhagwan Shankar, Bhagwan Shiv. And when this young boy, Ghanshyam, left the home, he was called Nilkantha by the others who saw him. There is some historical documentation of a rishi named Markenda who gave him that name. There's controversy about that also. These controversies that people bring about, they have no significance whatsoever. What difference does it make what name he was given? The fact is, anybody can be given any name by anybody. The fact is that he demonstrated tremendous yogic accomplishment. Why is that not talked about? People are so much concerned about who Markanda Rishi was and did he give him this name or not. I mean, who cares if he gave him that name or not? That doesn't change who he was. The fact that this young boy went into the Himalayas and mastered Ashtanga Yoga and realized incredible spiritual, psycho-spiritual and trans-psycho-spiritual truths, why is that not being talked about? That needs to be talked about. That needs to be understood. And nobody's talking about that on the outside. Outside the 40 organizations, I have not personally heard anybody talk about this. And that is a true disservice to the life of Swami Sahajanand, and above and beyond that, it's a disservice to humanity to deliberately ignore an extraordinary spiritual master this way. So that is why, that is one of the main reasons why, not the only reason, one of the reasons why I decided to create this website, Swaminarayanspirituality.com, just because of that reason. And because of many other reasons also. Primarily being to introduce the actual spiritual truths. So anyway, when we consider this Nilkanta Varani, who is observing the highest level of brahmacharya, where he is not allowing even the semen to be discharged from perspiration. Now I want to ask you a question. In the history of India, or any religion, have you heard anything like that before? Has anybody heard anything like that before? You see, but the documentation from the time of Ramanand Swami onwards is that this young boy was living in such a state, and Ramanand Swami tried to extract that perspiration from his body, but still that did not work. That kind of unbelievable penance, which is unimaginable even. We cannot even imagine that thing. At least I cannot. What that can be. That is beyond imagination, actually, that this kind of state was accomplished. And how that was accomplished. We can talk about that a lot, but it's very hard to even talk about and to fully grasp. How is it that he did this? And he stayed in that state for extended periods of time without any concern for the body or where the next meal will come from. And he is continuously doing his worship of Bhagwan Vishnu. And he's asking this question, what is Jiva Ishwar Maya Akshar Brahm Parabrahm? This question. And he is roaming around. Think about this. Now, Nilkanta, the word Nilkanta also means one whose neck has become purple because of holding the poison. There's a story of Bhagwan Shiv holding the poison, But that word is, of course, for Bhagwan Shiv. But that word can be applied to others also. And again, people are named Nilkant all the time, even today. But in the life of Nilkanta Varani, what is it? Where's the poison? He is absorbing the poison of the sansara. He's removing the difficulties of others. That's the real role of a great sannyasi, real sadhu. The true sadhu, the true paramahansa, that's the role he was playing. That's the form that he was in. It's not simply sitting in a cave somewhere, or just isolated. It's not. He's actually engaged with the world to remove the problems of the world, the poisons of the world, and then within his own body, using his own spiritual power, to transmute them and to destroy them. That is called creative destruction. And that destructive power, that is the power of Bhagwan Shiv. And that power was awakened inside Nilkanta Varani. That much is for sure. I mean, that much we saw. That much is documented. Now, again, that's just the way I'm putting it this way, presenting to you Nilkanta Varani in the form of a sadhak, in the form of a yogi. But one who is also taking on the difficulties of others and destroying the difficulties of others. Many incidences that are there, which I won't go into now. You can go into any of the different organizations that are there and study from them about the specific incidences. I will also present them much later on in the future at some point. I just want to give an overview right now. But these are the key points. There is tremendous compassion. That's another thing to keep in mind. Karuna, love, is so intense. That he was saying that even inside the leaves, inside the plants, that God is existing inside there. God is existing inside all living creatures. He was living in this state. This is an evolution. And as such an evolution occurs, there is constant compassion for all living beings. So this is the kind of individual that we can see. And not completely. There's so much more. There's a tremendous amount more that can be said. So anyway, the point is that Nilkanta Varani was moving through all of India in such a way where he was exploring Vedanta, but he was exploring it with this question of the five entities, or Panchabheda it's called. And he was exploring that, in my opinion, to find out who knew the answer to that. Another opinion can be he was doing it because he wanted to learn more about it. You can take that perspective if you want also. It is up to you. Now, in all of this, what do we find? We find this boy now at the age of 18 coming into Gujarat and then ultimately meeting Ramanand Swami. But before he met Ramanand Swami, he and Muktanand Swami had written 2 letters to Ramanand Swami. Ramanand Swami wrote a letter back, and those 3 letters are called Tripatri, 3 letters. It's not Shiksha Patri, it is Tripatri. And if you read the letter written by Nilkanta Varani to Ramanand Swami, and that letter is in the Bhakta Chintamani, it's all rhymed, and you will see, and I'm not going to go through that right now, but you will see in there the total devotion to Lord Krishna by Nilkanta Varani. You will see it very, very clearly. There is no doubt about that. Anybody who says that Sahajanand Swami did not worship Krishna or was not a devotee of Krishna is totally out of their mind. That is not true at all. He was a devotee of Krishna. Let's be clear about that, because if we miss that point, we will miss everything else also. This is the point to understand, that devotion to Krishna is absolutely fundamental to understanding the ultimate Swarup of Swami Sajananda. Because if we don't understand this point, we will miss everything else, which is exactly what has happened today in so many places. Now, I want to try to explain this a little bit. Nilkant Varani wanted to have, this is the way he described this. He told Ramanand Swami that I want that realization of Krishna in the Goloka. He was already masterful in Ashtanga Yoga, but he's in the role of a sadhak. So he's showing the glory of the Satpurush, of Guru. And through the Guru, you get the doorway. The Guru is the doorway into realization of God. This is the basic idea. But Nilkant Varani completely presented himself as a devotee of Sri Krishna. Which Sri Krishna? The one who came here on earth in Devki Vasudevanandan, Sri Krishna. And Shaligram is the puja he was doing of Bhagwan Vishnu. So this devotion was there. And those people who are outside the Swaminarayan Sampradaya, who do not worship Sajanand Swami or Bhagwan Swaminarayan and all that, here's my statement to them. Please try your best to understand this point, that Sajanand Swami is a devotee of Krishna. At least if you can understand that point and maintain whatever upasana you have, you can gain tremendous things from Sajanand Swami that way. What is happening now in today's society, because people are not even connecting with Sajanand Swami in this way as a devotee of Krishna, they don't see the tremendous teachings in the Vachanamrita and other places in the Sampradaya, other scriptures that can be useful in their own path. So whichever other path somebody may be on, it doesn't matter. As I mentioned in the last recording, all paths are synthesized in the teachings of Sajanand Swami. Whichever sampradaya one belong to, or whichever path one may be on, there is directly shown by Sajanand Swami in Vachanamrita, and we will get to this later on, but directly shown how to remove every obstacle on the spiritual path to realize God. And that is true for Christians or for Muslims or for Hindus or anybody in any sampradaya. Anybody wants to realize God, however they consider God to be, that God is one and unparalleled. For Sikhs also, Ek Omkar, Ek Onkar. Then they have the Guru Granth Sahib and all that. If they study Vachanamrita and they study Guru Granth Sahib, they will understand Guru Granth Sahib even greater, even at a greater depth. If somebody is studying Bhagavad Gita, and if you study Vachanamrita, you will know Bhagavad Gita at a much greater depth. So my point here is that let's build the connections. Let's not get stuck into organizational fragmentation and groupism in these small-minded things. We have to get rid of that. Nobody is going to realize God with a groupism mentality. It's not possible. Whenever there is groupism, there's a boundary that the mind creates and you're gone, finished right there. And you can never enter into Akshardham that way. Akshardham, Golokdham, never have any spiritual progress with groupism. Groupism is a type of poison that has poisoned all of humanity in every religion since time immemorial. The groups need to be there. And I'm diverting a little bit again, as I apologize again for that. But the groups need to be there because they are a means to an end. They are not an end in themselves. No spiritual or religious organization is an end in itself. If it becomes an end in itself, you wind up in groupthink. It's a psychological phenomenon. Google it. Google it now if you don't know what it is. Just Google group think and what that is. It's a type of synchronous thinking within a group, and then everybody outside the group is considered to be an outsider. And what we know is what we believe is to be the only truth, and that's it. And they start out with fixed conclusions and do everything to justify those conclusions. That is called, in psychology, group think. In my opinion, anybody who is involved in that group think phenomenon is totally blocked off. You're gone, completely dead spiritually, because your mind cannot progress, cannot grow in any direction. That is not the purpose of these spiritual organizations. The Sajanand Swami, look at his life, and I'm going skipping ahead a little bit. He encouraged spiritual dialogue. Look at Vachanamrut. He will say again and again, Prashna Uttar Karo. Ask questions, and let's do question answer. Let's do discussion. The Paramahansas ask questions among each other. It's called Goshti. Contemplate together. Think together. Not get into small groups and fight with each other. And if we don't realize this, we will totally misunderstand Swaminarayan Sampradaya, Sajanand Swami. And not only that, we ourselves cannot progress further spiritually. This is my opinion. Now you believe what you want. It's up to you. Do what you want. But the fact is that the mind must be free to explore spirituality completely from every angle. And on that basis, progression can happen and real development can happen. Otherwise, there will be conflict with others. And when there's conflict with others, you are totally gone spiritually. I can prove that to you based on the teachings of Sajanand Swami himself in Vedras. On the second page itself, he has talked about Jeshta, Kanishta Vritti and other such things. So we'll get to all that. But the fact is that coming back to the devotion of Bhagavan Krishna by Nilkanta Varani is absolutely foundational for the entire Sanatana Dharma to understand this point. And those people who are not emphasizing this and are discarding Krishna are making a massive mistake. If you discard Krishna and the relationship between Sri Krishna and Swami Sajanand, and if you don't talk about that, or we don't talk about it and the people don't know what that is, then what will happen, the entire sampradaya will be seen as a cult or as a different religion altogether. And that is what is happening now even. That is why there's so much controversy. So to prevent that from happening, the devotional link between Nilkanta Varani and Sri Krishna is absolutely foundational. It is the foundation to bring about a unitive consciousness and to bring about an understanding of Sajanand Swami that is acceptable to the multitude of people within the Sanatana Dharma tradition and other religions also. If we don't do it that way, what will happen is that it will become much more sectarian and eventually cultist. And if it becomes cultist and sectarian, it will become a new religion. And if it becomes a new religion, then the Vedas and the Gita and Sri Krishna and the Avtaras and 24 Avtaras, everything will be discarded. And the whole foundation will be literally shattered. And the Sampradaya will become a new religion into something else. And new things will be written that are not even connected with the Vedic tradition. To prevent that from happening, Sajanand Swami himself has said whatever he is saying is based on the teachings of Ved Vyasji. Ved Vyas is the original guru of the entire Sanatana Dharma. There were gurus before him, but he systematized everything. We have a day called Guru Purnima Day, and he is the one who is honored during that day. Of course, we honor our current gurus and all. That's good, that's beautiful. But we must not forget Ved Vyasji. And Sajanand Swami himself has stated everything that Ved Vyasji has written is accurate. And he considers his words, Sajanand Swami considered Ved Vyasji's words as the ultimate authority on spirituality. Now, what more do you want on this? Think about this. So again, my point here is that if we discard the original Sanatana Dharma scriptures, if we discard the Vedic mantras, if we discard the importance of the Panch Dev, that is Bhagwan Shiv, Bhagwan Vishnu, Ganesh Ji, Surya Narayan, Parvati Ji, if we discard them, then we will be nowhere. We will be absolutely nowhere, because what we're doing actually, we are damaging our entire biological, psychological, and neurological, and the entire chakra system, and the 72,000 nadis inside our entire system by discarding these Panchadevata, because they are the ones that are residing as within us, and their power is needed to reach the Atma and to reach the Akshara Brahma. That is why Sajanand Swami said these 5 devatas are puja. Each devotee should do their puja, do their bhajans, can do their mantras also, no problem. There's no problem with any of that. He's talking about doing upasana of Bhagwan. And that I'll explain that in more detail later on sometime. This word upasana and all this thing. But right now, in this recording, I'm trying to simply emphasize the devotional connection between Nilkanta Varani and Bhagwan Krishna. And in that letter that is written to Ramanand Swami by Nilkanta Varani, it is totally describing Nilkanta Varani. In fact, Nilkanta Varani has presented himself as a total devotee of Sri Krishna. And he described his penance, he described his tapasya, and he described his devotion towards the Guru Ramanand Swami. Then Ramanand Swami is also worshipping Sri Krishna. Ramanand Swami was given Diksha by Sri Ramanujacharya in the dream into Vishishtadvaita. So there's that link. And that's where the Ashtakshara mantra for Bhagwan Krishna also comes inside. And Goloka is talked about in the Shikshapadri. We'll get to all this later on. But if the general public on the outside can resonate with the spirituality of Swami Sajananda, which is beyond all divisiveness and synthetical in nature, then the teachings in the Vachanamrut are so potent that whichever path one is taking, whether one is a Sikh or a Jaina, or one is a Vaishnava or a Shaiva or a Devi worshipper or a Christian or a Muslim, or even if somebody is an atheist, Nastik, that person will also benefit from the Vachanamrut. Everybody benefits. Vachanamrita is not about teachings to a particular group of people. Vachanamrita is an incredible scripture of the discourses, the dialogues that occurred between the spiritual master Swami Sajanand and the disciples. And what they talked about is at the highest level of spirituality in simple Gujarati language. And it is for the whole of humanity. This is the point. It is not about a sect or about a Gujarati community or about a particular community. If you think of the spirituality in that way, then that is not spirituality. That is a massive form of ignorance. That is Maya, actually. If you think in terms of language only, or in terms of group, or just in terms of culture, then that is Maya. But if you want to get to the Atma and the Akshara Brahma that is totally beyond Maya, then there's no issue of group or culture or language or any such thing. It's beyond all this. But the languages that are there, the culture, the traditions, the different programs, temples, mantras, shastras, diksha, all this thing that is there is a means to an end to go beyond limited, fragmented thought. All right. So I think that's good enough for now. There's a lot more. There's really no end to what can be talked about here. It's an endless stream of things actually to talk about. But this is enough for now. Right now, let me just close by saying this, that those people who are not connected with the Swaminarayan Sampradaya or don't know what it is or have some misunderstanding about it, go to the original scriptures, the Swaminarayan scriptures, and you will find in there the devotion of Sajanand Swami to Sri Krishna. That's a very important point for everybody to understand, because that's a foundation. If you put that foundation away, you lose everything then. You can't talk about, Akshara Brahma or Akshara Dhama or any such thing without this foundation. So this is, and I will explain that in the next recording even further, step by step. All right, thank you very much. Jai Swaminarayan, Jai Sri Krishna.